Usually our programs and meetings I introduce you to, but since you're here, why don't you just tell us who you are and why you're here?
My name is indeed Dave Martinelli, and I am proudly from Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania. There's a pawn shop on the corner in never mind. Never. Like most of us, when I was a child, I had a train set. It was an American Flyer train set. You know, it went around in a circle like it was supposed to. And then I went away to college, and my sister made it disappear. She is no longer my favorite younger sister. And I was remunerating about the loss of my American Flyer train set one Christmas with my wife. And my wife of 50 years said, "Oh, my father sent me a train set years ago. I think I know where it is." Yes, yes. It was an HO train set, a Santa Fe F7 locomotive, and a set of Herkimer Model Works streamlined passenger cars. And we were in business. And that started it all. So off and off since '83, I have been playing with HO trains in one capacity or another. And I finally retired from work in 2020 and started to play at it a little more. And I joined the Mid-Central region. See that, get that on TV. Mid-Central region of the National Model Railroad Club. We proudly call ourselves the Keystone Division, as the Keystone is the state block of granite symbol, something like that. But where was I, Andy? Keep me on track, Mike. You know, I left the station. I don't know where the track, whatever that saying is. I got back into trains. So I joined the Keystone Division, and one of the things that we do is we move the meetings around southwestern Pennsylvania into the West Virginia Panhandle, into southwestern Ohio, or southeastern Ohio, southeastern Ohio a little bit. We went to a train show in Austintown, Ohio, just outside of Youngstown, Ohio. And they have a O-scale layout upstairs and an HO scale layout downstairs. And there was this train running around on their HO layout. And I said, "Gee whiz, I think that thing's pretty. I love what they've done with those colors. What is that?" Nobody seemed to know. So I had to start doing some research. Oh, now, before I give you the results of the research, everyone please raise your right hand. Please raise your right hand. I'm about to divulge to you information which cannot, under penalty of law, be given to my wife. And that is the number of these locomotives that I now possess. Thank you. You are now members of the double probation brotherhood, whatever it is. So I found out what they were. And then I started to delve into their history a little bit. And the more I started to get back into the history and the more I started to look around the history, the more interesting things that pop up that you learn about history. I had a chance to go over to K&I. Andy and I went over to K&I last night. And I talked to Jackson and he said, "I know what it is." I said, "Okay, tell me what it is." He said, "It's the Union Pacific M10,000. Did I get it right?
Yes.
No, that's not it. Because he knew that. So he couldn't have forgot that. He knew it. What was the other? Oh, it was a CBQ 9900, the Zephyrs. It couldn't be that. He knew that. And then when he ran out of guesses, I says, I've got one that you forgot about, or maybe hadn't even heard about." Oh, see, I mashed this button. It's not one of those. Everybody knows what those are. Those were made by the 10 bazillions. Now, is that an E or an F?
E.
It is an E?
Yeah.
Okay.
What about that one? That one's an F? Okay, see, everybody knows EMD, EMC, made a bajillion of those. And they're very popular and they're somewhat very pretty, but they weren't the first ones, as Jackson pointed out. And certainly nobody has forgotten them. What's behind door number 2? Oh, and there's a much earlier E something or other. What's interesting to me on this particular slide is the sloped nose, the slanted nose, the chisel nose on the front of this early E unit. Behind the next door. Here's locomotive number 1. This was EMC. They were still corporation in 36. EMC's first streamliner that didn't come in a fixed articulated set like the 10,000 and the 9900 and the Blue Comet and the Green Diamond and the Rebel. Those were all fixed train sets. But here, EMC releases its first streamliner with regular old couplers, so you can add as few or as many cars as you want. So now the streamliner becomes a big business. And this is quite beautiful. Like the streamlining, what's behind the next door? Whoops, okay. It's getting awful hot in here. I gotta take this shirt off. Oh my, what's behind shirt number 1? That's why I want the, Alco diesels. Okay, yeah. Everybody knows about the EMDs and the Fs and the Es and the FTs and the number alphabet. But most people, when they think Alcos, do indeed think of what? The PAs and the FAs. Those were Alco's big sellers, and they were produced in fairly large quantities, and they're very easy to obtain as models. And that was introduced in 46, but it was not Alco's first diesel streamliner. What's behind door number next? Oh, that's the PA. That's one of the builder's photos of the PA and all that stuff around the headlight and the fact that the nose is quite long, the windshields are a little tighter. That tells us that's a PA. However, in 1940, Alco introduced a streamliner which became known as the DL109. And this, to the best of my knowledge and belief, is, were you going to guess that, Jackson?
I just read that, and as a fan of the Rock Island, I've seen photos of this.
We're going to see a lot right now, because this is door number 3. New Haven's DL109. Get that on the camera there. Is that a focus? Right, you got to have the folks in the audience see. Yes, we're going to talk about DL109s. And the more I read about the Alco stuff, and we know Alco's out of business, and we know that the railroad that bought the most of them is also out of business. So the records on a lot of this are kind of murky. So let's see, what's next? This is the first one that Alco produced and sold to the Rock Island, and they call it the DL103. And you'll see some of the changes are very minor and some are absolutely mysterious. But of particular note on this locomotive is the 2 radiator openings on the rear of the locomotive. On the rear of the locomotive is the 2 radiators. Radiators, tomatoes. Do you have a preference? Okay, but this is unit number 624. And the other unusual thing about this, and as you know, Alco and EMD and a couple other manufacturers had been building yard switchers since the early 30s. And the yard switcher was powered by a 6-cylinder inline engine known as a 538 series locomotive. This is the only DL series locomotive that came with a 538 turbocharged motor. That's unit 624 for the Rock Island. Dun, 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 dun. The first few locomotives that were produced, and these were the ones produced literally before the war, was the Rock Island 624, 2 went to GM&O, and 1 more went to Chicago and Rock Island and Pacific. And they were all powered by the 539 series turbocharged 6-cylinder inline diesel engine. But in order to get a 2,000 horsepower unit, they all came with 2 engines, hence the 2 radiators in the rear of 624. Whoops. Okay. I'll only read pieces of this, and I'm already telling you about some of that. About the accessories, 538, 539, blah, blah, blah. The first one that was actually called a DL-109, which is the locomotive that I fell in love with, and you'll see why in just a moment. This is a bunch of technical stuff. When you're done reading, just put up your hand and we'll go to the next one. I got yelled at by a bunch of colonels a long time ago. If you put it on the slide, don't read it to me, Lieutenant. Yes, sir. Hence, when you've had enough, just start to wave. Yeah, I read all that stuff. Okay, Fred says he's seen enough. All right. This is the next production run. And you'll see there's a number of different railroads here. Rock Island got what they call a 107. The 108s, the ones that are highlighted, are actually the B units of the DL series. So it had no cab. It was just the big box, like all the F and E booster units that you're quite familiar with. They went to the Southern, the Santa Fe, 1 to the Chicago and Northwestern, 2 to the Milwaukee. I didn't see one on your layout yesterday, Bob. You hiding your DL 109s from me?
Milwaukee Road drafted a EMB nose on it.
Yes, on one of the 2. Yes. There's all sorts of wrinkles. Don't tell my wife how many books I have bought reading about the DL 109 locomotives. And this is the last run. And notice now we see they're going to the New Haven Railroad. Note the production dates. In the previous slide, we're all through 1941. 2, 4, 6, about 10 units were produced in 41, and 4 units were produced prior to that. Now we get into the large production run, December of 40, actually the 13th of December. 6 days after Pearl Harbor, the New Haven gets its first DL 109. And New Haven becomes Alco's largest customer, accumulating a fleet of 60 locomotives between December of 41 and April of 1945, when the last DL 109 rolled out of the factory. Now, during the war, there was something called the War Production Board, and its job was to allocate raw materials to those industries that were supporting the war effort. Now, since diesel locomotives and diesel technology was still on the early side, you couldn't produce anything new as far as diesels went. But how are you going to prove that your passenger locomotives were supporting the war effort? DL, dual use locomotives. The New Haven ran the 109s on passenger service in the day and freight service at night, and they did not miss a beat. There was no downtown to add water and coal, to drop the ashes, to do all the other things, the types of maintenance that steam locomotives required. They gassed them up or dieseled them up, fueled them up, turned them around, sent them back down the track with freight overnight. Next morning, they were back running passengers during the day. Now, the word exotic is highlighted here because there's one particular feature that really attracted me to them that sets this diesel streamliner apart from every other diesel streamliner that was produced in any quantity. And again, just wave your hands when you're done reading and we'll go to the next one. Of course, I stole all this stuff out of books. I'm not that good a writer. Oh, Fred says we're done. If you're not done, yell at Fred, but he must be a fast reader. The designer of the DL-109. Bob, who designed the Hiawatha's?
It may have been Otto.
Otto Kuhler. Kuhler. Otto Kuhler designed the steam streamliners of the Hiawatha. And Alco went to him for the design of their DL series. Again, it's going to look pretty much like that last the original EA that the B&O got. And there's Otto, and there's the Hiawatha in steam. 2 pictures of it to give you an idea of Otto Kuhler's works. Wave your hands, we'll change the slide. Or say, next door. Okay. Russ just woke up. Okay. The most distinctive feature of the DL-109 is a 3-piece windshield and some of the headlight assemblies. And there is 624. Well, it's 2 of the 3 pieces. Please note the decoration around the 2 headlights and the little ribbing coming out to the sides. This was all Otto Kuhler. He was an industrial designer, and he loved these kind of highlights. And here is a New Haven DL-109. Boy, their signature stripe runs up over the hood, right up around that beautiful third window and onto the roof of the locomotive. And I just thought this was the cat's pajamas or the cat's collar, something like that. Okay, a total of 74. Okay, let me know when you're done reading. But there were only the Northwestern, the Santa Fe, the Chicago Northwestern, the Rock Island, and the Southern were those that took the other 14 units. Now, one thing about the 60 that went to the New Haven, they were all A units. They would run them tail to tail, get a 4,000 horsepower set, 2,000 in the first cab, 2,000 in the second, is a 4,000 horsepower set for running passenger and freight service. Here's the Santa Fe's unit, and it got a true B unit. If any of you are familiar with Santa Fe all the way on Facebook, I've seen as they're putting up their weekly batch of running around, I actually caught them running their DL-109 in one of their videos, and I thought, yes, they live on to this day. Not everybody forgot about them. And here's the Milwaukee Road. Bob, you need one of these. You've got to have one of these.
David,
Yes, sir.
quick question. So the very first slide of this series that had the Rock Island 109, and you mentioned about Otto having the little
ribs and whatnot around the headlight. Yes.
So was did Rock Island just want that one? Because I see this one, New Haven, didn't have any of that.
New Haven took them all without the doodads. I think the Rock Island, and I think maybe the GM&Os got some of the fancy headlight work. But again, that's one of those things that's easy for a, locomotive facility to do away with or modify. You can see what the Santa Fe did.
Yeah,
They
I thought
added a
maybe
second
something
headlight.
Like if you wanted tinted glass or, the Rock Island just pay a little more for air conditioning and
Well,
some trim work.
Well, they were all air conditioned, all
just-
the passenger cars, yeah. And again, the New Haven had a number of different paint schemes, and the very first one that I saw that I got to buy, literally 2 weeks after I had seen my first one, I went to the Amherst show in Springfield, and I bought one in warm orange with a hunter green roof. And we'll get to see those in just a minute. There's warm orange down at the bottom. I've actually gone so far as to buy a New Haven paint book, and I've got all the different color samples in my book. I'm not crazy. I don't have an addiction at all. I'm sure you all can see that.
He can quit anytime he wants.
Now, literally the earliest units were all delivered in this beautiful hunter green with this deluxe gold for their striping, and the earliest units had that nice stripe around the windows, which were some years later after they went out of production, but would go back for rebuilds and mods, replaced by screens, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. But these were all 6-axle locomotives. Here's one of my personal possessions. This is the Brooks Brothers scheme. Silver on green pinstripes, or silver pinstripes on green. Left on right, right on left. But yes, I own this baby. And it took me a while to find pictures where I could find one with the gold pinstripes and the silver pinstripes, but they existed, as this picture allows me to pretend. And here's the one I first bought. The warm orange silver pinstripes with the hunter green roof. And again, I just love the look of the locomotive. I love that third window. And it's this some more. Now, you'll see I say numbers. Yes.
Okay, were the color changes just fashion or did they use them to designate routes or something?
They were just fashion changes. We've seen this for folks so long they need repainted. Do we want to do the same thing? Do we want to do something different? There is a New Haven unit numbered 722 that is painted in cranberry red. This is my holy grail. If you find one, please tell me, because I need this. This will make my collection complete. And it's funny because apparently if the paint faded, they got a little brighter. But I need a cranberry DL109 to make the set complete. Now, I will not acquire all 74.
You need a 3D printer.
Well, I know they're out there. They come up like hen's teeth. If you watch long enough, you'll see one. But please, I've got to have that. Got to have the cranberry. Please note the little cat's whiskers. You see the 3 little whiskers behind the number board? You'll see people talk about the cat whiskers on the New Haven units. I had to include this. This is the ugliest locomotive that I have ever seen. Because Patrick McGinnis killed the New Haven Railroad. He spent money like it was not his. And as far as I'm concerned, he's responsible for their ultimate demise. He attempted to dieselize all of the electrically catenary sections from New Haven into New York. It was a financial disaster for the railroad. And but there's thankfully only one got painted this god awful McGinnis paint scheme. Enough of the McGinnis paint scheme. Here's a whole fleet of 3 in hunter green and deluxe gold. Now, again, we talked about the fact that these were 2,000 horsepower units. They ran them tail to tail, got a 4,000 horsepower unit. But one of the things that affected the history of the DL-109 is the fact that EMD by this course, because we're after 41, was making a copious amount of B units for their E's and F units. And New Haven said, what can we do to MU an additional unit, perhaps to get a 6,000 horsepower unit with a 3rd locomotive? They experimented with 2 of their on-hand locomotives. They just put MU cables on the front of the one, and then they did this to the other one. A nose that only a mother could love. So that they had a little door also to get out of that locomotive into the rear of the other locomotive. So that's a goodbye. Okay, here's a nicer picture, is a nice advertisement. You see them in their traditional tail-to-tail arrangement. And here's a cutaway. I managed to find one of these. And in fine print, it says adjacent Topeka and Santa Fe, Chicago Northwestern, Milwaukee, and New Haven. And that's supposed to show you the minor differences in the front of the locomotive. God bless you if you can read it. Yeah, it's small. Now, this is actually an AI generation of many of the color schemes. We've got the Brooks Brothers on the right, the traditional hunter green and deluxe gold in the center, the warm orange hunter green, the god awful McGinnis, and the cranberry that I am seeking. Here's a B unit. This is actually painted in the Southern colors. And if you saw in those earlier slides, the Southern did take traditional B units, took a total of 3 along with 3 A units, or DL-107s and DL-108s. This is the locomotives in brass. There's 2 brass versions, one by Hallmark, which nobody likes, and one by Overland, which people do like because it is rather well detailed. But you know, this is champagne brass, and I'm on a beer budget, so I just need a nice, expensive but inexpensive plastic bottle. Now, does this look like a DL-109? It does. Is it a DL-109? This was Alco's next attempt at a new power unit, because the DL, the 539 turbocharged 6-cylinder engine, was maxed out as far as horsepower could be taken out of it. And EMD is gone to 1,350 horsepower, some units with 1,500 horsepower. So Alco is now at a real disadvantage in the horsepower race, and we're nearing the end of the war. So they put together, and Alco put together, God, Alco shirts, it's their fault. New Haven didn't do it. Oh, it's inside out, so I can't even blame Alco. They put together what they called a 241 series diesel engine, and they put it in these particular, Alco did it, they put it in these particular locomotives, and this was an ABA set, and it had a particular name because it was in flat black paint. Any Irish historians here?
Black Mariah.
This is the Black Mariah, the paddy wagon set. They feel it, and you can tell because the radiator position has changed drastically. It's housing Alco's new 241 series diesel. It was at least a V12 and it might have been a V16. Before I come back and do this 3 years from now, I'll come up with better data. Good. But this 3-unit set, they took it out on tour. Nobody was interested. They leaked. The piping was too complex. Nobody was interested in Alco's 241 series locomotive. And Alco wasn't that interested because when they outshopped these and toured them in 45, they were already building a locomotive an engine to replace the 241 called the 244. And that was a V16. And that ended up in the PAs and the FAs. I almost said PBs, PAs, PBs, FAs, and FBs. And as I pretend everybody knew about the Alco PAs. And that's the end of my story. And you are all so relieved. If you have any, oh, wait a minute, there's show and tell. Again, my wife knows I have a few, my wife knows I have a few of these. But whenever you go on a road trip, don't leave home without it. This is one of my DL. Here, Mr. Television Camera. That's my DL 109 there on the road show. So I want to thank y'all very much. Those of you that were kind enough to let us into your homes yesterday to see your layouts, we were absolutely blown away. I only hope that some of you have a chance to visit us in the Keystone Division in Pittsburgh, and especially to see Andy's layout, Conrail in the 80s. Thank you all very much. Any questions for David? Oh, yes,
David,
several.
so from the, what was the 103s, the 109s, did they have the prime movers in the same position to where, like in the 103s?
Even the two 538s that went in Rock Island 624 were in the same position, but they piped the radiator, the second radiator, all the way to the rear. And when they decided they're going to make a lot of these, why should we be piping to the rear? So every locomotive except 624 had the radiator spaced apart, and every DL after 624 had a 539 turbocharged, 2 of those 539 turbocharged diesels, but they ran out of horsepower. And when they decided they were going to build another engine, then they went to the PA body series.
Anybody else has a question? You'll either need to come up front so the folks online can hear you, because they're telling me they couldn't hear Russ back here, or you'll need to repeat their question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes. Should I repeat the question? Okay. Russ wanted to know if in the DL series was anything different as they went from 103 to 105 to 107 to 109. And the only difference in any of them was the first locomotive, Rock Island Unit 624, designated as a DL 103. And the Alco records are gone. When that company folded in 69, their records went in the trash pile. But every locomotive after Unit 624, whether we called it a 103, a 107, 108, 109, 110, had 2 539 turbocharged power plants and the separated radiators. How did I do? All right, I've recovered. Yes, sir. You have a question?
I see all the embellishment that they put on, but during the war, with all the materials being so scarce, how did they get that past the military?
And again, the first 10 were all produced before 1941 in the war production. The question was, how did the excess decoration on the front of the DLs get past the war production board? Because we're looking at it in our final slide. the War Production Board doesn't take effect doesn't come into being until May of 1942. I had to try and research that. And they were only allocating materials. But literally nobody wanted the decoration, especially the New Haven didn't. And after the War Production Board came into being, New Haven was already running them as dual use, both passenger and freight. So they were permitted to keep building this proven design during the war. And as I read about the War Production Board, I actually found a link to go back into some of their notes. And then I read 3 or 4 different commentaries about those notes. And one guy says, yes, it happened this way. And one guy says, I read the same stuff and it didn't happen like that at all. So I don't know who to tell you is right. The War Production Board was there, but it allocated materials. It did not specifically say Railroad A, you can build 21 units of this. Railroad D, you can build 55 units of this. It was morely a way to control where raw materials were going. Did I answer your question, sir? Yes.
HO1, just model wise, just specifically named HO. Who has made these?
Okay.
Proto 1000.
These wonderful locomotives as DLs, the question was who makes them in HO. These were originally made by Lifelike as the Proto 1000 series. Later, Walthers buys out Lifelike, and you see Walthers Proto 2000 units. And some of them come DCC ready, and a few came DCC equipped. And okay, put on your security earmuffs. I must have about 20 of these things. Yes, sir, you have a question?
Were the Black Mariahs 2-axle or 3-axle trucks?
These are on 4-axle trucks, 2 each. 4-axle trucks, four rear, as the FA units came later. But this was 1 3-car set, and they were scrapped. There's none of that. Alco took them back at 47 and immediately scrapped them. Now the Alcos remained in active, or the DL 109s remained in active service through about 59. And they were all scrapped. There was not a one that was saved. And one of them ended up as a stationary power plant unit. It was the unit 716, and they painted it some vermilion orange color, and it faded to salmon pink. And it remained as a stationary power plant, I think, until 67, and then it went bye-bye. So none have survived. But yeah, the Black Mariahs, that 241 series engine was such a disaster. Alco wanted to forget about them, and they cut them up and buried them as quick as they could. Are there any other questions? I want to thank you. You've been a great audience. If you have any personal notes for me for making this a better presentation, I would greatly appreciate your staying long enough to coach me up. Thank you. Back to Ron. Dave, thank you. I hope it's been entertaining.
Yeah.
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 All right. We'll see you all next Saturday at 7 a.m. Goodbye.